All right, welcome back to Check In with Chris Brown. I have the beautiful Amber with me. She is, why are you laughing already? She is a trainee psychotherapist and a behaviour analyst. Did I get that right?
Behavioural psychotherapist, cognitive behavioural psychotherapist,
okay, there we go.
Behaviour analyst.
You keep me right.
Yeah, in check.
And she was introduced to me by Rob Blackburn, who's also been on the show through the work that you were doing with him for his plays, interviewed on his podcast. And I thought it'd be really interesting to come in today to get like a kind of like a clinical approach, but just dive into different, I know we've had a lot of conversations around therapy, different therapeutic modalities, and even, I guess you mirror me in the sense of like, I'm really intrigued into myself and I want to analyze, look at myself, but also I know you're very, very intelligent. So who knows where this will go.
But I'm loving these compliments. I'm here all day.
I'll ask you the thing that I ask everyone, which is the name of the show. What are you checking in with today? So just like an emotion or a feeling.
I think around the holidays, which I recently posted, I think I'm checking in with myself with grief because I think it really presents itself a lot during the holidays when you see people with families, things like that. And I think it's really important to like check in with yourself about how you feel about certain things around the holidays. It's not always joyous. You can also have moments of...
Yeah, Christmas is a weird place, isn't it, for a lot of people? Like I have a weird time at Christmas. My family's up in the north. You know, I've got children separated from their mom. Like it's a very weird time for me. Like it's not always amazing, if that makes sense, but you kind of, you make it to be that thing.
Yeah, it's festive, but I think there's so much focus on it's meant to be the best time ever because you've got this time off and Christmas you celebrate. And kind of like the cereal packet look is family all around a table having dinner and everyone's smiling. And I think sometimes you can feel quite isolated if you don't always feel that way.
Yeah, and in big families as well. I know like I'm quite an outgoing person, but I know in like big groups sometimes I'm quite reserved and I like to sit back. And so it's like, it's a weird thing. Like you can be the most outgoing person, but when you're in an environment with like a lot of family members, you can still feel quite alone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like how comfortable you feel with family as well, because we're all bound to family by blood, but they're not necessarily the people we probably spend the most amount of time with. And there's different characters and you've got your role to play in your family, which might be that person who observes, sits back, doesn't cause any drama, just does their own thing, which like is different to maybe how your friends see you.
Yeah. So we're just touching on some things there as well around internal family systems and like how we have different roles that we play.
Yeah.
You were talking about like the manager role.
Yeah. The manager role is the easiest one to explain because it's kind of, it looks like I'm maybe like talking to different parts of myself here. And it's not a personality disorder. It's just we're talking about the different parts of the self, I guess.
Yeah.
And for me, a manager role is the person who keeps you in check. They keep you organized. They make sure, you know, you're performing at a high level. They make sure that you're going to work and you're doing well. You're going to the gym, you're eating well, you're doing all these things. But that manager is driving you constantly. So they're making you live in drive. There's no time off with the manager.
Yeah.
The manager doesn't see rest. The manager sees go, 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 go.
Yep.
Which can get you very far in certain areas, but then there's a payoff. So what parts of yourself are you not attuned to be able to stay in that mode? So are you looking at your vulnerable self? Are you looking at yourself who has strong relationships? And that requires a lot of vulnerability, which, you know, the manager doesn't always like. So there's all these like different sides, like your firefighter self and things like that.
So what's the firefighter?
Your firefighter is your one who is protecting you. So they're the one who comes in and like you know, fights fires.
Yeah, vulnerability shows up and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, and the firefighter's straight in front of it and it's like, no, we're going to avoid that because that doesn't feel safe to our internal network. And then the manager's like, oh, just go and overwork. Just overwork because that feels good. And you see how they all like tap into each other.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. Like, I know we just talk about Christmas, even the thought, and this is an old pattern in me, but even the thought of slowing down over Christmas is like alarming to my system. Like it really is. I'm like, I've got to talk myself through it. And we're like, no, it's cool. It's like, this is a natural time to rest. Like the world is resting, but it doesn't feel comfortable or natural for me to do so. Like I want to keep momentum. I want to keep going. I want to keep speed. I want to keep moving forward. But what I've learned over the last year or so is like that flow and softness, tenderness, like lacking structure is also beneficial in different ways.
But what doesn't sit right? Is it that you've got so many things on and you want to push them all forward? Or is it that you don't like rest and like rest scares you because who are you without driving forward?
Yeah, so it's like it's a huge part of my identity is like what I do and who I am in terms of like career and professional life. And so it's the discomfort of like being still and stopping and slowing, because everything I do is like, it's very, I'm jiu-jitsu. It's a very like aggressive, attacking, but also there's a lot of flow in that too. But it's like everything is like driven, goals orientated.
But then you also present with a lot of being present. So breathwork, cold baths, things like that.
So that's the things that I've offset that because I didn't have that before.
Right.
So it was just all that, right?
Okay.
So I was all drive, all commit, and then it would like literally make me feel like 2 weeks over Christmas, I'd find it so hard to just relax. Like even like days where you'd be like Christmas Eve, even Christmas Day, there'd be like a part of me that's like there's shit to do. Does that make sense?
But is there shit to do? Or is that your brain creating a to-do list because it wants you to be a to-do list and not a human being?
Yeah. So it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's around like, you'd be a perfect client. So like with cognitive behavioural therapy, it's about kind of understanding why you're constantly living in drive. Like your body obviously thrives off a certain level of arousal.
Massively.
And actually reducing any of that arousal feels discomfort to you. It doesn't feel the norm. So what you would look at is like exposure therapy in terms of managing that level of arousal and starting to increase it. And that doesn't mean it takes away anything from your success or hitting goals or things like that. A lot of the research actually shows when you have that time off and you have the contrast of drive, rest, you actually perform at a higher level over a more sustainable amount of time. And better yet, your level of well-being is greater.
Yeah, like I can resonate with that as well, because I've noticed that I seem to work less now, yet accomplish more, where before I would just like bleed behind my laptop. Like I would sit there and I'd just get through as much as I could, but often like that time would just take up as much as it took up. Like there was a lack of productivity there. So there was a duration of time commitment to work, but it wasn't efficient.
Yeah.
And what I find now is that there's more efficiency in what I do.
Do you ever find yourself having a conversation with someone and you think, oh my God, I really hope this conversation ends soon because I've got so much more to do?
Yeah, but I find like now, we're having therapy here. I was like, is this what we're doing?
It's just how I was feeling with this conversation. I'm thinking, I've got so much to do.
Yeah, no, like I do feel that sometimes, but it depends. Like I really connect with people and I get like nourished by good conversation. But if it's like surface level, it's bullshit. It's like, it's not bringing any depth to my life, then yeah, like that can be an inconvenience.
So I feel like this is me. I'm sorry. Hi, this is Amber's podcast. So when you say like living drive, like if you had to quantify it in terms of like your goals, are they short term? Are they medium? Are they long term? Like what's the time frame for them?
There's a little bit of everything, I think. So that there's always short term deadlines. There's always a medium term goal. The longer term stuff I used to find really difficult. Like I wasn't really compelled by vision. I was more like driven by like a need to get shit done, like a never ending void that just never stops. So there's just more and more work to be done. So I was driven by that. I was moving away from like the pressure of everything as opposed to being drawn by a vision or like a direction of where I wanted to go.
Behaviourally, that sounds like you like reinforcement, quick reinforcement, successive. People who can't see that long-term aim, generally it's because they need that immediate reinforcement.
Yeah.
So that can be dopamine spikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever kind of behaviour that is. So a lot of people who have like addictive personalities or obsessions with things, and just reverse it. Even if it's validation, it's like that constant, I need it. But the more we actually expose ourselves to it, the less dopamine we get, which I know you know a lot about. So I think you would do really well, like setting a long-term goal.
Yeah.
And like being like, you know, I assess that ad hoc. It's not something I need to, but like to show to yourself that actually, yeah, I can sustain that wait time. And it's not something that needs to get done now, today, immediately.
Yeah.
It's something which feels good in 2 years' time.
Yeah, like, and that's been my journey. Like the last 12 months is to like let go of like structure a lot. So I used to be very rigid, like this is how it has to be. This is what I need to achieve. Now I'd say like things, so it's weird. I've had a weird year. Like I feel there's been so many growth factors in my business and life that haven't been revenue driven. And I feel like revenue wise, like I've taken a back step from where I was, which is a really hard thing for me to accept, because that's usually my scorecard.
Most male scorecard.
Yeah. So like that's my scorecard. Not that the things are terrible, but it's like, it's just a step back from where I was, and I was constantly driven by that. But so many other areas of my life has flourished because of that. So it's like it's acknowledging the growth that's not linear and structured and revenue driven.
Because if you have that, how you describe it sounds very black and white, rigid thinking you had. Mm-hmm. Like maybe it's someone who's like used a lot of should statements, like I should be doing this, I must be doing this. Yeah.
I made a lot of money, like I should be making more, I should have had this, I should have had that, I should have had the other. Like I've had a lot of money through my hands, and like I used to say this, I used to catch myself a lot. I should be financially free by now.
Okay.
But it's like, that doesn't serve me.
But say you got to a point of financial freedom.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people want that anymore. I think people want time freedom more than financial freedom.
I agree.
Because I work with a lot of wealthy males in their 40s. It's quite a similar situation, and the payoff as they don't have long-term relationships. They don't have any relationships. They're quite transactional.
Yep.
They're not fulfilling. They have realised actually they've got to that point and they've got that X amount of money in the bank, and they can go and do this, that, the other. And actually they realise more chaos comes into their life once they achieve that, because they no longer have that same hunger and drive and want for it anymore. Mm-hmm. So I can't even remember the point we made, so I'm sorry about that. But I think what you've described with that should and must statements, if you would have stayed in that fixed mindset, it may have got you X amount of money, or it may have got you a certain lifestyle. But if you don't tap into this growth one, then what could life have been like there?
Very lonely, yeah. I mean, the failed relationship, not just because of that, but it was definitely a contributing factor, you know? Didn't see my kids as much as I would have liked to, and I'm a better father now. Like I'm more present, like I'm slower, like I'm much more present in everything that I do now, which is huge. And I can see it, I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've been it, like where I've just been driven by business. I think for a lot of men, like that's I don't think it's just a male thing, but I think it's definitely a masculine trait, which women have too.
Yeah.
To be like driven by an outcome.
Yeah.
And to gather as much as they can. And like, yeah, like a lot of people that you see, they're wealthy but unfulfilled. Monetarily, never need anything else, but massive gaps in their life. Failed relationships, failed marriages, not good relationships with their kids. Like that's pretty common.
Do you think the payoff is ever worth it? So I kind of had this discussion, and I was like, at what point do you advise someone, so not in my role, like clinically, because I wouldn't be able to advise, it'd be more like looking at how it's impacting life, but from like a coach perspective, mentor perspective, a friend perspective, at what stage would you intervene with someone and say, if you continue down this path, this is potentially what the future will look like for you?
Yeah.
At what stage is that okay to do? Like I don't think there is a stage.
No.
So it's like, do you just allow that to happen even though we know it's going to happen? And then the person has to kind of work in reverse in a way to get back to where they are, but they almost have to hit that point to get to it.
Yeah. So I can speak from my own thing was like, it took a significant life event for me to go, shit, like things got to change. So like I didn't have the external thing at the time. I wasn't really in therapy or anything. Didn't think I really needed it. Not that I was avoiding of it. I would seek therapy if I felt I needed it at the time, but there was stuff that I like hadn't processed, had no awareness around. And it was that like significant life event that made me go, okay, like there are things that I've got to work on here. And then like started unraveling shit. And I was like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff to work on here. A lot more than I ever thought was possible.
Yeah.
So now as a coach, like I use my own vulnerability. Like even now, like this situation, I'm comfortable in it because I know the impact of me being vulnerable here will impact somebody else to be go like, I can see that in me.
Massive. And I think that unpacking that you just mentioned there, when you actually, and I think you have to actually have a level of presence to be able to actually like start unpacking it, because those avoidant behaviours, escapism, they'll always creep in, and you can make certain little changes and you can do goal setting, but I don't think it's anything that's going to be enough to change you as a person, because these behaviours that you've learned have taken time. They've taken certain environments, they've taken certain people you're around. Absolutely, as a behaviour analyst, you can 100% unlearn behaviours, but you need to have something to redirect it to, or a new behaviour, and that again takes time. So I think you need to be very present to be able to do it, which does require things like therapy or going to a coach, or some of it you can probably do yourself as well. But I think with what you described there, with more like trauma and unpacking like quite significant events, I always use this like analogy in therapy. So if you have laundry and you're just constantly shoving it into a wardrobe because you just can't be bothered folding it, and you're just constantly shoving it in, and every time it's getting a little bit harder, but you keep shoving it in, and then eventually you're going to open it and it's going to fall on top of you, and it's going to feel overwhelming. And that's, I think, what happens with, in my belief, trauma happens over time. It's certain little events which might happen, and then they eventually get to just this point, which is this turning point, like a significant life event, like you said, or it just gets too overwhelming, and eventually those doors open and you're forced to confront it.
Yep.
I'd love there to be a world where people choose to open that place when they've got someone beside them who can be like, right, this looks so overwhelming. I get it. But we need to start unpacking this layer by layer. And when you start unpacking it, you'll notice just how quickly actually it all starts slotting back into place, because you're never going to erase it. That's not what therapy is about. It's not, even things like we spoke about EMDR therapy.
Yep.
A lot of people think because it's like eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing, they think you are completely eradicating a memory from the brain. Nobody has that skill.
No.
That I know in the therapy world. Maybe spiritually, I'm not sure. But it's about understanding, like, you can desensitize yourself to certain events, so then your arousal levels are lower. You less triggered, which is a massive thing. Like, how many people just walk around and they just respond by feeling triggered from past events, and they're no longer present, but they don't see it, and so that it's constantly someone else's fault, or it's always attributed to an external thing. And I wish everyone had free therapy, because there's a lot of therapists who say if you've had a childhood, you've had trauma, which I think, and similar with adulthood, everyone's been now through a COVID pandemic, which was quite traumatic for everyone.
Massively,
We're conditioned to be free, do what we want. We live in that kind of country. To then be like, you can go for 1 hour walk a day. You are now working from home. You have now, a lot of people lost their job. You can't see your sick relatives in hospital.
They passed away, you didn't get to say goodbye.
All those things that we're conditioned to do. Someone passes away, you go to a funeral, you have a wake. They're no longer normal. That wasn't normal to do anymore. And I think everyone would just benefit from it. Like, I don't want to be too clinical, but like that assessment of exploring who someone is as a person, like why they're like that. Some behaviours serve you, some behaviours don't. And look at what you're ready to unpack and not. It's never going to happen in that way, and you've got to wait for that person to come. But hopefully through things like podcasts, like getting that message out there, people do just resonate with it a little bit, and they see it as more a positive factor to their life, and something that can enhance, like you said, you being more present now makes you be more present with your children, makes you actually strive more in certain areas of business, things like that.
Yeah, like I'm a better coach now. Like I'm much more compassionate and present with clients. And there was so much you said there to unpack as well. But like therapy, sometimes people are just like, this is the way I am and that's how it is. And it's just like, draw a line and that's it.
Yeah.
But like there's so many things that you got to look at yourself and go like, do I want to continue with this behavior? I've changed so many times over the last 18 months through the different modalities of retreats and therapy and like breath work and so many different exposures to different things. Coach and mentoring, different therapists bringing out different things. And I think we're just so fluid as people. We can be so dynamic. We can change so many things. The desensitization, like not being triggered by things that used to trigger you before. The willingness to be vulnerable and open, the willingness to go to conversations that would be difficult before. Like it'd be hard for me to, I used to be really defensive. So I didn't like to be like wrong. Like I didn't like to be wrong at all. Used to have a need, like a high need to be right.
You're just describing every man on the planet.
Yeah. Like high need to be right. I would like say things like, I know for a fact, because I was intelligent as a kid, still am, self-proclaimed intelligence, but I would like use that as a way to avoid, and I'd use it as a defense mechanism really to stop being vulnerable.
Well, so if you could kind of assert your intelligence over someone else, your defensiveness would then win because you've kind of won the argument. So it's not even about the argument, it's just about you not having to agree that you have done something or how you are as a person.
Like for me to go, I fucked up, I was wrong, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot. Now, like I have that in spades.
How did you find your relationships at the time when you was being that person?
I mean, to be honest, like probably more difficult than they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was hard. It was just like an avoidance. Like it wasn't comfortable for me to like enter into even simple things like stating what I wanted in a relationship or stating what I needed from a relationship was difficult for me to do.
Where do you think that stemmed from?
I don't know exactly, to be honest, but I've always probably had like a little bit of people pleasing in me. Like I think a lot of us do.
All of us do.
Yeah.
No one goes into life and goes, I want this whole room to not like me.
Yeah, exactly. So even like certain things like football, like my dad would travel with me everywhere and I'd play football, and I'd almost be playing for him. Like I'd maybe like ping a ball like 60 yards across the pitch, and like I'd just look at him straight away to see his reaction.
Do you know, sorry, this is a clinical in me. That's validation, looking for validation.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then you mentioned about you want to always have goals to do for that validation that you're successful and things. I think there's an underlying tone here of validation.
Yeah, there was definitely like a huge amount, like probably still to a degree I have to notice it because it is there. I just, like you say, the sensitivity to it is far less than it used to be. And I think that's a lot to do with like the trauma release stuff that I've done, the breath work. Like the breath work's been unbelievable. We talked about being present. Like the breath work gets you into a place of presence where you're just able to handle stuff. And there's so many things come up.
How have you been, because I've had clients go to retreats and do breath work and then they've ended up coming to therapy off the back of that because they've said things have come up where they've either disassociated from it in the past or they've just felt this overwhelmed immense emotion from situations which have happened, and now it's like impacting things like sleep or things like that because it's become present.
Yeah. So like with breath work, a lot of the modalities are very aggressive. So sometimes there's too much activation and charge. So basically like the Wim Hof stuff, things like that can be very activating, like, and a lot can come up and it's too much. So the modality that I'm trained in, we're taught two things, titration and pendulation. So we build up activation to a window of tolerance. It's like where they feel comfortable with whatever they feel, the sensitivity or the sensations, and getting into a felt sense, like what do you notice in the body? Where do you feel it? What does it feel like? If you could
like
label it, what would it be? Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, it might be a bit of energy in my chest, or I feel like an overwhelming emotion coming up. And then we pendulate to a resource. So we teach a principle called resourcing, which is a place of safety in the body. So they'll notice a little bit of activation or charge. We'll label it, notice it, link it to something in the external world, put a color to it, a felt sense to it, then bring back to a place of resource, this place of safety. You know, for me, it's often my hands, like just a a comfortable place and just really slow the breath down, go back to parasympathetic, connect to this place of safety. And then that's like the pendulation, right? You're touching like trauma vortex, healing vortex, and you're moving between the two. And titration is the principle of like adding a little bit more activation as our window of tolerance expands. And so what I find with a lot of breathwork modalities is it's just like, it's all charge. It's like breathe as hard as you can, like go into the activation, because people want like the big release or the big euphoric feeling, but it's too much. It's overwhelming for the system.
Yeah.
And it can actually re-trigger and it can re-traumatize.
I was going to say, with some clients we work with, you have to close down a session at the end, because if you don't close down a session and they're in that heightened sense of actually reliving that trauma and they've not gone back to the safe space, it can then be really overwhelming for them when they do leave. I think in terms of like the staying present, how do you then get to teach them kind of when they leave, how do they access those same kind of techniques? So say I was working with a client who self-harmed due to anxiety or things like that, I would teach things like putting hands in ice, which is not the full going into an ice bath method, but it still triggers that same sense of grounding. Like how I'm guessing a lot of the clients you work with, as you said, they want that breakthrough in the weekend that they do it or whatever it may be. How do they then replicate and take that into like the real world with them? Yeah,
so there's a part of, so my therapist, Matt, he was the one who introduced me to breathwork. He's a trained psychotherapist as well. Yeah. So he said when he was doing only talk therapy, he's like, there was something missing. And he's like, with breathwork, there's something missing. So like he fuses breathwork and psychotherapy together. For me, it's like, it's really coaching and breathwork. So for some things, like I would refer out, like for some of the, like, as Matt would say, like big T trauma, like if somebody come to me with like sexual abuse or stuff like that, like I would refer that out to Matt.
So there's parts where you wouldn't necessarily treat them with that there and then because they're not there.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a lot of support that needs to be around that thing. To be honest, a lot of the time, just having someone present with you is a major thing for people, especially a woman to a man. Like if they've had a bad relationship with a man or something, like that can be supportive, but also triggering. So your presence is really required. And like we're taught resonance as well, like to be in resonance with someone. But yeah, I think the modality of like the breath work, unpacking it, talking it out, then having to share what your experience was, but also reminding them that the resource is always there and practicing going to their resource regularly, I think is really important technique, like almost like meditative.
Yeah, it is the same way in terms of therapy, in terms of you're teaching them this toolkit that they can access.
Yeah, exactly.
And some tools will work, some days they won't. But if you've got that arrangement there will be something which can help kind of reduce in that moment.
Yeah.
I find it really fascinating with trauma because I was speaking with my supervisor and she's been focusing quite a lot on trauma over the last 2 years. And she had a big conference with like the WHO's World Health Organization, and they were saying that actually they get into a point in the research where if they looked at the ICD-10, which labels all the kind of different mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, OCD, everything, and they're saying they get to the point where they could wipe it all out and just write trauma because everything stems from trauma.
Well, Gabo Mate, I don't know if you know, he's a massive advocate of that as well. It's hard for people to accept, like it's hard for people to identify with trauma.
The amount of chronic health conditions which are treated by lots of medication, especially with old school psychiatry as well, which is very medication led. A lot of the younger psychiatrists are now stepping out of that and they are looking more at holistic approaches and things like that. But old school psychiatry, I've worked in forensic mental health, and these people are on mass amounts of medications, psychotropic, like so much medication.
Yeah.
And the conditions don't change. And when they actually start doing that treatment and that deep work, it's all trauma related. And I'm not saying when they finish that work that then they can come off medication, because things like psychosis and things, they're not going to be able to, but certainly things like SSRIs, they can definitely come off and things, which is really interesting. I'm a massive believer in it. I think it's early in its development, and I don't think it's going to be accepted by all that mentally it can impact you physically and things like that. But it's definitely the area and the way that I want to go.
It's a weird thing, isn't it, with like SSRIs, because like they create a cascade of other problems and they might solve one, but they create others. Like even like impotence in men, it creates like, which then that area of your life, it's like a huge shame, guilt. Like maybe your relationship breaks down because of it. Like the impact is drastic.
I think the last time I read the research and kind of wrote something on it, it was 1/3 of the time they have no effect. 1/3 of the time they make the conditions worse. So they can actually lead people who were, say like moderate level depression, they can then end up committing suicide or going higher levels of depression. And then 1/3 it has some effect. Whether that's because they're also doing something else in that time, we don't know, because no one, it's so frustrating because no one's longitudinally studied for that length of time to understand. And your life experiences will be different than mine. So you put us both on the same medication. Say we both scored 15 and we're like moderate depressed, and you gave us both medications and we're alone at the time. But then I go on to meet someone and have like this amazing network and work's going great for me and things. I'll probably will reduce my scores, and you could not go on to do that. But then it looks like there's been impact for me and not for you. So because we don't ever look at all these external variables in people's lives, like meaningful connections, purpose, coping skills they have themselves, diet, exercise, we just go off, GP has prescribed you this. Did this person come back for a repeat prescription in 3 months? Yes or no? That's it. That's a tick box. Yeah. And that's where the data comes from.
Yeah, that's crazy when you consider. Because like I've never known anyone whose life has got worse because of meditation or through yoga or relaxation or exercise or eating well, you know, like there are all these things. Yeah, sometimes, you know, depression, sometimes you have to feel it. You have to lean into it. You have to lean into therapeutic modalities and be like, why am I feeling this way? What is it about my life currently that's, you know, depression's a natural thing in my opinion. Like I feel like we shouldn't live there. We shouldn't be there for a long time, but I feel like it can occur at any time in any one of us.
Bereavement is the same as depression. And that's why they say someone who's bereaved, you should be asking them if they lost someone recently, because for 2 months they shouldn't even be looking at medication as a treatment option, because feeling sad, you know, loss of energy, not being able to sleep, not feeling as happy in situations are a natural response to losing someone you love. Yeah, we treat it the same way we do depression.
Yep.
Like we can give you a pill and everything's going to be right. And I think like you said, that sadness is a normal human response, and we need sadness to know what happiness is. But everyone avoids sadness. Like, no, you get positivity, like positive mental attitude all the time. And no one like actually allows you to just be sad. But when you're sad, you actually gather more data about yourself when you're sad than when you're elate and happy. Because when you're sad, you're looking at, well, what is there something missing from my life which is contributing to how I feel? Or is this something I'm doing? Am I drinking a lot more and then therefore that's having an impact on my depression? Is this someone I've recently lost? Am I not where I want to be in life? You can only ask yourself those questions if you acknowledge the feeling.
Yep.
But if you're numbing yourself from the feeling, you will never be able to get that pattern. You'll never be able to get that understanding of yourself.
Yeah, you'll push it away, push it to the side, avoid it, drink, you know.
Make bad decisions. Bad decisions. And other people can see it when they're not in it. And you can almost pinpoint, oh, that person's done that because of this. But that person can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's where things like what we do really helps you take that first step, which is awareness.
Yeah, it's like, it's accepting that things aren't the way that I like them to be. Equally, everything's transient. You know, happiness is transient. You're not supposed to be happy all the time. Imagine somebody who is 100% happy 100% of the time.
Didn't they do a study? And I can't remember what his name is. He was classed as the happiest man in the world. Apparently, he'd gone like 42 years happy, every day happy, and then he had a period of depression.
Yeah.
And that was like, a psychologist was like, right, that's it. If the happiest man in the world has had depression, then happiness isn't a continuum.
It's equally like, how much was he avoiding in the state of being happy, you know?
Yeah.
So like you know, all these things that happen in our life.
And how do you measure someone being, right, you can say someone's attractive, whatnot, but how do you measure that person? I wouldn't be able to walk into a room and be like, that person's happier than that person.
That Twitch guy, right? Just committed suicide. Did you see it?
I'm very upset about that because I dance. So like for me, he's amazing.
Yeah.
And to see, like on Instagram, he posted 3 days ago,
Celebrating
dancing,
his 9th
saying, I'm going to
anniversary.
dance every Sunday till Christmas. And then...
Yeah. So you look at that from the outside in and you go, happy, successful, family, wife, career, like all these things. Yeah. Commits suicide, shoots himself. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's so hard to wrap your head around, like, because you look at that as like, you look at suicide or something like that as somebody who is like really down in the dumps, like got nothing going for them, but it's not. Like, it can.
But actually, it's those people who things wouldn't happen to because they're showing themselves to be that way.
Yeah.
And they're open to receiving that support, which we talked about, like that vulnerability of, I'm going to let people know that I'm not in a good place because I'm open and I want to actually receive that support. The people who are at risk are unfortunately, it's males as well. And he was in that demographic of a 40-year-old male. And they're just not open, and they're just, whether it is a case of women have more of a platform. So you think of women dropping their children off to school, a natural thing to say to someone is, "Hey, you all right?" And women will just, they'll offload if they're not. They're like, "Oh, I'm not actually all right." And they're like, "Do you want to grab a coffee, or I'll ring you later?"
Yeah.
And that's their platform. You never really get that with men. They don't really open that dialogue for you to do it. And like, because I know that, because like male friends I speak to, they always say to me, "I've never said that to anyone, Amber. I would never speak to anyone about that." And I just think, what are your friends asking you when you go out?
Well, it's like in male culture though, it's like, it's very surface level for one. You've got to also remember that, like, deep down, subconsciously, everyone's like in a pecking order. Even like the closest mates, like everyone is kind of fighting for hierarchy in a weird way. So if somebody opens up and be vulnerable, like they feel like what will come to the side of it. I've just been in Vegas for Paddy's fight, and like coming back to the airport sober, didn't drink, like feeling good. And there were some broken men, like hadn't slept for 4 days, like spent thousands of dollars, like got up to all kinds, and like just looking at that culture, like the lad culture of it all, it's like, it's easy to see how people wouldn't open up.
When you look at that culture, what do you genuinely think when you see it?
I'm on the other side of that now. Like, coming back from Vegas, the thing that I took from it most was like, that place doesn't really have much for me anymore. I see a lot of sadness in that culture. I really do. Like, there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of connection, but a lot of distance at the same time. It's weird. So there's a lot of like surface level banter going on, ribbing each other, taking the piss out of each other. Yet, like, there's some lonely people below that.
Yeah, I do find that. I find like males are the first to like book those group plaid holidays, and they are quite consistent in doing it.
Yeah.
Which us girls are horrendous at. We need like a PA for everyone to just even get one evening out. It's horrendous. But I feel like even though there's that geographical distance between females and things, that it's more meaningful and deep. And when you do speak, you actually do feel lighter at the end of it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think males, when they go out, they're doing the bad things.
Yeah.
So actually then when they go back to the normal life, it's in a worse position mentally because they've just been drinking for several days. They may have got up to no good.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no end to that alcohol though.
I would not want a stag do.
Oh,
it's
broken.
ruthless.
Like, the amount of drink that they drank, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing that I've sought out in my life over the last year and a half or so, was being depth, brotherhood, connection. I have friends now that I could bring anything to, and that's enhanced my life significantly. And I have a group of men that we get together every other week called the Winners. Like, every other Thursday morning, we connect, we meet, we share. Like, we spend 3 hours together. We go cold dips, we go for walks, we, do whatever.
I like that you've called it the Winners because it's already like putting that positive name to it.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a selective group of men, and we invite people in that we think will be valuable to it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's cute. It's making me think of like young kids on the playground when they like, when they can hug their friends and do all those nice things.
That's what it's like. Like, there's actual connection, there's depth. Like, there's not a thing that we couldn't bring there.
That's good.
Like we talk about intimacy, sex, relationships, like everything.
See, that is something males do not speak about.
I know.
But yet females do.
Yeah.
And you'd think it would be the other way around, like all the juicy details and things. So like my friends are on dating apps or they're married or things like that. We all, when we get together, we all have something to share or talk about. And like I find myself giggling because it's like, like it's that time where you actually just say the most outrageous things in this like safe platform.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I learn a lot. So I need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with males, it's just like,
it's very like crude surface level. It's not details. Like
it's just like, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
10-10, all the best.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. It's exactly that. Yeah.
But then how do you learn as a male?
Mm-hmm.
How do you learn? Because I would be interested in like studying this because then I know how to work better with this age range of clients.
Yeah. How do men learn porn? That's truthful. Like that's their platform. Unfortunately.
I don't have words. if that's how they're learning.
From young though, as well. Like I don't watch it anymore. It wasn't serving me, and I encourage as many people as possible not to watch.
But also, if they've not had like positive relationships around them as well, and watching porn, how do they go on to then become a good partner or a valuable partner?
I guess like the feminine becomes the oracle then. Do you get me? Like women are more inclined, I feel anyway, to be like, this is what I like, this is what I need. It's, to be honest, my experience of like intimacy growing up would be like a man's job is to please a woman. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that.
But it's like very performance based. That's how men are, right?
It's ego driven.
Yeah, I get it.
Because it's not, the woman is then just the object.
Yeah, but she wants presence, depth, slow, like the opposite of how a man is, right? Typically speaking.
I can't speak for all women.
I can't speak for all men either.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating subject.
I absolutely love it. So one time, right, I had to watch pornography at work.
Oh.
So I worked in the
Forced to.
Oh, God. So I worked in a forensic rehab, and I had to argue with the psychiatrist that actually letting the patients have pornography is actually like a human right. You know, similar to what you said, they were on medications, they were impotent, things like that. It was really impacting their self-esteem. And we had to look at kind of the pornography that they would be able to watch, and some of them had sexual historical offences.
Yeah.
Gosh, the range of pornography I watched. I watched dwarf pornography. I watched a lot of role play things, and I was watching it, and I was trying to think to myself, if I wasn't sat in my office right now watching this, would it actually be something I would watch at home?
Yeah.
And it was just straight away 100% not, because I just knew straight away it didn't do anything for me. So when I think, like, when I discussed it with males, I'm like, what does it do for you? And it's like, well, it's just a means to an end, seems to be just is what it is. It's pornography. Like, you watch it. And it's like, are you doing it from boredom? Are you doing it from you don't have a partner? Are you doing it from an actual learning potential? Which sounds crazy, but what is your rationale for doing it?
Yeah.
And they either say to me, oh, why do you have to look so far into this? Like, we're just watching porn. Or they'll actually give me an answer. And it's like, well, if you've not got a partner, you want a little bit of extra material.
Yeah, it's not even always not having a partner, though, because there's people in relationships and marriages and that still watch it daily. So that it's like it's an avoidance of an uncomfortable feeling. So like what I'd find is like if you've got like big projects on or deep work, like some people just can't concentrate and they need a release.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's other pieces to it as well. There's like feeling sad or lonely. Like porn's something that never lets you down. It's always there. It's consistent. It's reliable.
But it's also a conditioned response. So it's not, you're not doing the act that you're watching. It's fantasy.
Yep. I agree.
So then it kind of begs the question of, why do you allow yourself to watch that?
Not me. I don't watch it anymore.
No, I'm not saying to you personally. Why do you allow yourself to watch it if you're not actually getting the true value of it? You might be better off instead forming a relationship with someone or regaining your relationship back with your partner and spending the hours doing that to then have a more consistent sex life yourself.
It's hard to do.
But that's a long game.
Exactly.
And I'm in it for the long game.
Hey, me too. But that's what I'm saying. I'm speaking on behalf of men. That's the hard thing. It's easy to go there.
If you had a partner, this might be a very personal question, and you might have a partner, and you was watching pornography and they said, I want you to stop watching it because I actually think it's not helpful to our relationship. I don't like the things that you do because of watching pornography. I'm trying to think of things here. Please, can you stop watching it? Would you be like, no, it's cool, it's fine.
Yeah, that's an easy thing for me to say now, yeah. I know a lot of people that would say yeah and still do it.
Yeah. So even though you love a person who is telling you their reasons for not watching it, the dopamine factor that you get.
I'm trying to think hypothetically on behalf of other people. Yeah, like I feel like it's the dopamine thing though, like you said.
Can we do a poll on your Instagram for this? If your partner should start watching pornography, would you?
Yeah, but when my daughter's not watching my stories.
I can't do it on mine. Too professional.
We seem to end up on this topic every time, don't we, Jacob? Like it's
so then we can go off pornography. I don't know that much about it.
No, but yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating. It's a taboo topic that I think more people need to speak about. But yeah.
Well, people speak about drinking. People speak about drugs. People speak about eating disorders, binging, things like that. But I'd put pornography in that bracket with everything else.
Yeah, it's just a vice. It's a thing. It's a go-to.
Yeah.
It's an escapism. It's a dopamine download.
I've worked with quite a few clients who are impotent because of anxiety and like too heightened arousal levels, and then they go to the bedroom, it doesn't work, it continues not to with multiple partners, so they're changing partners constantly because of that fear of rejection, and now this belief's getting much heightened because every time they try to do it, it's now not working. So they're then utilising a lot of pornography to overcompensate.
But then that even like makes it worse.
Exactly.
Because it's visual based. It's not like, so then because, you know, sex is a present, intimate, connected, felt sense thing. Pornography is a visual thing. Then people, they don't get aroused by anything other than like wild, visual, crazy stuff, which is mad.
But like, that goes back to like Albert Bandura, which is social learning theory. So you learn from what you visually see. So I wrote this recently in an essay because I was like, I think this is what a lot of people do. It goes to like Skinner and like conditioned responses and stimulus and things like that, which is what pornography is. It's a stimulus. We have conditioned people to respond to a stimulus, but that stimulus isn't sex.
No.
We've got rid of what sex is and conditioned people to respond to two actors doing what they're doing and seeing that as sex. So you've got to like uncondition yourself to actually unlearn that and not replicate those behaviours. But that takes a heightened level of, number one, awareness, number two, confidence to actually be your authentic self and not just replicate something you've seen in a porn. And three, learn how to like stop exposing yourself to it.
Yeah, it takes, I have a bet with my friend right now. So like, he's like, I'll give you 500 quid if I watch porn between now and Christmas. Because like I've challenged him so many times over it.
Is he going to be completely honest with you?
Yeah. He's part of my group, and like we have the depth of each other's soul.
I know he's got a hand over 500 quid at Christmas.
Yeah, but he would do it.
I mean, do you see heating prices? I'm sorry, that is an expensive wank.
No, he's it's funny. But yeah, I trust him. That's the level we go.
I hope he does it. Do you have to give him 500 if he does it?
No. Why would I have to do that?
Imagine he did go behind your back and you had to give him £500. That's positive reinforcement.
I know. Rude.
How rude.
We're coming to the end.
Oh.
I know I could have went further into this. What's going on for you currently? I know you're at uni. What are you studying?
Yeah. So I work at Behavioural full time. And then they are also funding me through a trainee cognitive behavioural psychotherapist course. And I'll be working with my face-to-face clients from Jan. And then I want to like continue that on. I want to work in private practice. For me, I'm very big on like holistic. So I'd want to tap into people's like diet, exercise, who's around them, things like that. And
it's more like coaching as well as therapy.
Yeah, like I'd like to do a lot of that because I teach yoga myself, and I'm very big into like moving the body and the mind-body connection and things like that. Massive. And I think if you can, I really wanted to get people to do walk and talk therapy. So combining two activities, one which, the serotonin, dopamine, all the positive endorphins, alongside feeling safe to be able to share things rather than it being in that office environment.
Setting,
so kind of seeing how that would work. And for me, like, trauma is a big thing. I think that's definitely where I'd want to take my research and like a PhD level and just really explore it a lot more, like chronic health conditions, trauma, and just go down that route.
Yeah, that's what like I've leaned into massively as well, especially being in entrepreneurial coaching. Like so many entrepreneurs are just driven by trauma of some description.
Yeah, massively.
So
because it's like it's accepted that there's going to be a payoff. It's like they know that, yes, all these things are going to be sacrificed. My own health, my own relationships, family. But yeah, this seems to be more worth it. And I often find with people like that, it's hiding that vulnerability. And it's that they've come from such a deprived area and they've had nothing, or the family structure's not been there, that they become so guarded and they have to give it to themselves. And the more they start getting reinforced by it and get validated by it, it's harder to say, actually, I'm okay at this level. I don't need to continue.
Yeah. It's like, hard. And there's a lot of reinforcement in success. So like you could go to work and be like a king and be loved and adored, and you could come home and like you've left a mess around, and you've got to deal with normal life stuff, and you're just a regular person.
And not just that, like you can come home and you're on your own. So then what do you need? You need the stimulation.
Yeah, work.
You need more work, or you need to say, let's go for after work drinks, or let's go to a strip club, or let's go and do this, let's go and do that. Because if your only success is based on a certain environment, that those people aren't even guaranteed to be there consistently.
No, exactly.
That could change. Like, success is like that. It's not always that way. I don't know.
Things,
I just don't know why there's not like a level where someone gets to and they feel fulfilled, and then they're like, actually, no, I want to focus on family now. I want to do this. I want to do that. Why? It does baffle me. Like, it massively baffles me.
Were you talking about men here?
I have to say it does seem to be more men. However, I do think women are now leading, and we're going down.
Masculine.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's not men or women, it's the masculine drive.
Yeah, and women are, masculine is like that decision, that drive, that direction. And obviously toxic masculinity, especially toxic femininity in females, is that control, wanting control.
Well, it's funny, like the feminist movement, it's actually toxic masculinity when you really zoom out and look at it. Not political at all. Yeah.
And be careful what I say. But I agree, because I will speak from my own experience so I don't get in trouble from anyone. I think I fell a little bit into that masculine energy. Way too self-sufficient, but to a point where I was blocking out actually meaningful connections and things like that, and very much driven and decisive and wanting to do those things. And actually, it's, for me personally, it's become very empowering, stepping more into that feminine energy, and things have come to me. And that's not me going like, oh, one. It's just I've focused on myself and my areas.
Back in your nature.
Yeah, and it actually feels really good. Like, I don't feel like I need to compete with men.
Yeah.
I don't, because I'm very competitive. So I've always had, say I go on a date with someone and it's a active date. I'm going to beat you, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I'm honestly like, yeah, but you're not. You're not. And because I am quite skilled in sport, a lot of the time they haven't beat me. So that's then made me, the next person who comes in, I'm like, you're really not. Then the next person, I'm like, all right, okay. But you can see how that belief then builds.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm just more like, well, we'll see on the day, won't we? Like, well, I'm not going to fully surrender because I win. But it's more like, well, we'll see. Like, I used to fight people to pay for a coffee, like to the point I'd barge them out the way. Like, I wouldn't let them buy me a coffee. But that's ridiculous.
It is.
Because that's not how it should be. It's like that acceptance and that giving
well,
and men
give and receive, right?
give
the
and
feminine
receive.
energy is receiving.
Exactly.
The masculine energy is given.
Yeah, and I'm definitely more into that receiving, which is a good time for Christmas. So anyone who does want to get me a gift, my address is
At Therapy with Amber.
I do accept PayPal.
Yeah. Venmo and Cash App in the US.
Anything. Cash gifts.
So what is your Instagram?
It's just at Therapy with Amber. I think there's an underscore there
Somewhere.
at the back. Somewhere along there.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
You'll be tagged in clips.
Yeah. Do the funny ones. I don't want to be one of those boring psychologists. Tag me in the funny ones.
Yeah, you don't have any say.
I'd like the wanking one in there.
Okay, done.
Thank you.
Sounds like a good end to note. Note to end.
Therapy with Amber underscore it is.
Therapy
is.
with Amber underscore at the end. Unusual.
Yeah.
There we go.
Follow, join my other 12 followers.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
It's been fun.
Yeah, I felt very present actually.
Good. It wasn't awkward either.
Don't, because now my face will go awkward.
Well, it's a good job it's over.